This is the 5-minute guide to the Wyoming-class battleships of the United States Navy. The Wyoming-class were the last 12-inch equipped battleships of the United States Navy and are good contenders for the title of best 12-inch gun dreadnought built. In my opinion, their only rivals to this title are the German König class and the Austro-Hungarian Tajethoff class. The final decision as to which should hold the title is largely down to what you value most in a battleship, as this factor changes depending on who is doing the analysis. Anyway, after the South Carolina class, the United States had built two additional classes of battleship, the Delaware and the Florida classes. These were improved designs with an extra turret for a maximum broadside of 10 guns along with an increased size of hull and better engines. The Wyoming class added to this with a 6th turret, bringing the total broadside up to 12 guns, as well as improving the armor thickness and layout, and incorporating a torpedo bulkhead for the first time, to give the ship more survivability in the face of submarine or destroyer attack. The main armament consisted of 2 forward twin turrets in super firing positions, 2 turrets aft of the superstructure as per the South Carolina design, and then 2 more turrets in exactly the same layout on an extended stern. There had been serious consideration given to instead using fewer 14-inch weapons, but this would have involved major delays and improvements to US ports to accommodate the larger ships that would have been needed, and since the United States was already falling behind in numbers of modern battleships, they decided to go ahead with the 12-inch arrangement using an improved design. A heavy battery of 5-inch secondary guns, some saluting guns and a couple of torpedo launchers completed the weapons fit. They would be the last US battleships with 12-inch guns though, because the Royal Navy was building the Orion class at the same time with 13.5-inch guns. All subsequent US battleships for a decade would therefore be armed with 14-inch guns. As with the preceding Delaware class, the Wyoming class adopted turbine engines which gave them a sustained maximum speed of 21 knots. Another improvement in the design was related to the cruise of the so-called Great White Fleet between 1907 and 1909. Although its intended effect was somewhat lessened by being composed entirely of pre-dreadnoughts in a period where many of the nations they visited had either built or were building dreadnought-type battleships, it had highlighted that the traditional casemate mountings for the secondary battery on the main deck was easily washed out by seawater in even moderate conditions. Therefore, the ship's secondary guns were moved up a level on an extend forecastle. Initially, both ships were still fitted with the lattice cage masts of previous classes, but the Arkansas was eventually given a proper tripod mast. In World War I, the Wyoming was sent across to the United Kingdom, where it became part of the Grand Fleet's 6th Battle Squadron alongside 3 other US battleships. Once in Scapa Flow, they found the US ship's gunnery was not up to standard, and they spent some time training with the Royal Navy to correct this. The ship also ran escort duty for convoys whilst waiting for the High Seas Fleet to emerge for battle, which it failed to do. It was present for the surrender of the German fleet at the end of the war, before returning to the United States. Afterwards she was refitted and took part in a number of fleet exercises before being disarmed after the 1930 Naval Treaty and turned into a training ship, primarily for anti-aircraft gunners. As World War II progressed, she remained in this role and gradually acquired more and more anti-aircraft guns and fire control units, including radar. The training and tactics she developed were a vital part of helping the United States Navy defend itself from the increasingly desperate kamikaze tactics by the Japanese. After the war, the USS Mississippi took her place, and she was scrapped in 1947. The Arkansas had a more active career, helping with the occupation of Veracruz in Mexico in 1914 before America joined in fighting World War I. After some time patrolling the coast, she was sent to relieve the USS Delaware, and so joined her sister ship as part of the 6th Battle Squadron, and so was also present at the surrender of the German High Seas Fleet. After the war, she also took part in many fleet exercises, but saw more international events and cruises than the Wyoming. Because she was not disarmed, but was the oldest battleship in the United States Navy to survive the London Naval Treaty, she was also refitted several times and entered World War II as an operational unit of the Atlantic Fleet. After Pearl Harbor, this made her one of the few operational US battleships left in service. But because she was slower and less well armed than the rest of the fleet, she was not sent to the Pacific, but instead spent time escorting convoys in the Atlantic. This was still important work, because as we have seen, most German raiders would not engage a convoy that had a battleship escort. She then saw action as part of the D-Day landings, providing shore bombardment and fire support for the advancing Allied forces alongside a number of other Allied battleships and cruisers. This was a key role, because the Allied armies had not yet brought ashore their own artillery, and no army gun on either side could match the firepower of a battleship's full broadside. After a similar role off the coast of southern France, she set sail for home and a refit before being sent to the Pacific, where she again supported landings on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, earning a total of 4 battle stars for her performance in the war. After taking troops home, the ship was deemed surplus to requirements and expended in the atomic bomb tests of Operation Crossroads. She proved remarkably resilient, surviving the airburst test codenamed Able in a damaged but combat-capable condition despite being less than 1,000 yards from a 23-kiloton nuclear bomb detonation. However, the next test, codenamed Baker, involved a similar device detonated underwater less than 300 yards away. The blast wave crushed the facing side of the ship like a tin can and upended the whole ship, dropping it front first into the now exposed seabed as the ship was inside the radius where everything down to the bedrock had been vaporized. She then toppled backward and was slammed into the seabed by 2 million tons of water coming back down. Somewhat unsurprisingly, this sunk the ship, but the majority of the hull stayed in one piece and the wreck can still be seen today. That's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have a favorite ship, leave its name there, and we will see if we can do that next. Thanks for watching.